All right, I have my pattern for my dragon here, and I'm finding pieces that I can cut out and make up this pattern. So one thing to keep in mind is that the dragon's going to have a zipper that goes up the middle. So as long as I can find pieces to kind of do just half, then probably what I'm going to have to do, since it's so long, I may have to use kind of a piece here and a piece here and then have a kind of a seam going across. But I plan to use that. These came from the arms and it's the right color because the legs are a different color, so can't use the legs, otherwise it'll look funny. You could use the legs on the inside layer because you won't see that, but on the outside I'm going to use these. So I'm going to get to cutting. I've got all my pieces, and I'm going to label these things so that I don't get confused. So I've got lower left, lower right, I have to actually add a little bit down here. And then I have high right, and oh no, I screwed up and did shiny. That's supposed to be that side. I am going to have to cut a new piece. All right, now that I have got all my pieces, I need to double check them with the original, which means I need a lot of room here. What might be easier is let me focus on just half. What I want to do, since I have this in two pieces, okay, lower and then an upper, I want to make sure I'm going to overlap them to give me the correct height. I don't want it to be taller necessarily, so actually I think I'm going to tape this to the table first so that I don't accidentally bump it. As I tape them together. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and glue these two together, and then we'll do the same thing for the other side. I am taking my pattern and I am now making the inner part of the suit. So this is going to be the inner layer, and I'm trying to just find a piece that's big enough. This is from the leg, which is, it's actually a different color of blue, but that's okay because it's going on the inner layer, so you won't see it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a gel pen, and I am going to trace this out. Here I'm starting to attach the extra material in the back of the Angel Dragon. I made sure that I got the outside is matte because my outside dragon is matte. Of course, your outside dragon might be shiny, but on this one, the outside is matte because that's where the print is, like the eyes and the mouth and everything. On this one, I needed to expand the waist, so I actually had to cut the tail off the outside, and it's going to have to be reattached because the person's hips and waist are so wide that I had to extend this extended material all the way down, basically to like close to the crotch. Does make it a little bit trickier because then you have to reattach the tail, but this is the where the zipper is going to go, and I basically am just working my way up, doing about a 1/2 inch overlap on each side, and I'll work my way up to the top. Okay, I am going to reinforce all of the torso seams on the Angel Dragon. I'm doing it with both the inside layer and the outside layer, and I'm doing it with each of those layers turned inside out. So basically these reinforcement seams will be facing the inside of the inflation chamber. So the seams that I'm going to be doing are this is the head right here, it's turned inside out. I'm going to do the neck, which actually this one I've already done on this this one. And then I'm going to do this seam that's between the blue and the white on one side, as well as the blue and the white on the other side. And then on the back, I'm going to do, there's a factory seam that kind of runs down here. It kind of runs across the back of the, this is the wing, and it runs all the way down to the crotch. This particular suit is an extended Angel Dragon. I actually added in this section here, so that's why you see the seam stop. So when I reinforce, I can actually stop there and then pick it back up and keep going. I don't need to reinforce the seams that I've made, the overlap seams where I've added the extra material, because that's already very strong. I'm only worried about these factory seams. Then, so after that's done, there's basically 4 seams on the torso that run from crotch to neck, and then you've got the neck, and then you've got the two arms and the two legs where they attach to the body. And that's this seam. It's circular, it goes all the way around the arm. Now this one's a little bit trickier to do because you've got this little flap sticking out there. So basically, as you do this one, you kind of fold it to one side and glue it, and then you can put a strip of material over it. And it'll need to be wide enough to cover. The most important part that it needs to cover is not really the tip of this flap, but the base of it. So whichever way you fold it, if I fold it this way, it's over here on this side. If I fold it this way, it's over here on this side. That's the part that's going to tear. So that definitely needs to have a piece of material bridged across it. The tip of the flap where you fold it over, it doesn't necessarily really need to be covered, although it can be. So what I've done is I went ahead and pre-cut a bunch of these strips ahead of time. They're at least about a 1/2 inch wide, a little wider. The wider it is, the more glue you're going to have to use, but color doesn't really matter because this is going to be on the inside where you can't see it. Although I will mention, when you go around the arms, you can use these baffles that you cut out. These are the baffles for the arms and the legs. And if you cut a strip all the way around that's 1/2 inch, it'll almost be, you'll still have to have like a little bit of a piece, but it'll almost be enough to go all the way around, and it's already curved, which is really nice. You can make the straight seams curve, but the curved ones are just a little easier. So to get started on this, I'm using my jar, and I'm going to go down this seam here and take one of my strips. I'm going to go ahead and round the end because those ends don't always stay glued, the corners. And then I'm going to go ahead and start this. I'm going to kind of overlap where I had previously put a strip on the neck. Now, if it's a seam like this that has a little bit of a flap, you'll want to kind of take your needle and just go under it periodically and put a little bit of glue, because you want to make sure that's also glued. And I'm not even going to pat it down yet because I'm going to put this on top of it. And then I can usually do 4 to 6 inches of this at a time. It goes pretty quick. And it's on the inside of the suit, so it doesn't have to be like perfectly clean. You know, you're not going to see it. Don't be super sloppy, but you don't have to be perfectly clean. Just the main thing is make sure you get a good bond. Make sure it's centered over there. Make sure you don't have wrinkles. You will absolutely see wrinkles, so do not have wrinkles. Those will show up on the outside of the suit. So you want to make sure you get a good bond. The thing that you don't have to worry so much about is if you have a little bit of glue residue. You don't have to worry so much about cleaning it up. If you spew glue all over the place, you might want to clean that up with like a paper towel, but just like little fingerprints and stuff aren't that big of a deal. So that's pretty much it. Same process. It takes a little bit to do both layers. I spent a day doing the inside, and now I'm going to probably spend a day of time doing the outside layer. And then the next step will be doing the eyes, and then joining the tips of the arms and then the legs together, and then doing the zipper. All right, a quick note on doing the reinforcement strips around the arms and the legs on the Angel Dragon. So if you're doing the side that has this little flap around the arms, this is the arm over here on this side, and then this is the body over here. You'll want to flip this flap towards the arm or leg, And then what you'll want to do is put some glue under it for a good 2 to 3 inches. You have to put quite a bit because it's kind of grooved. So you want to have enough glue to get in there. And then what you want to do is kind of pull the material of the arm out so that you don't have it bunched up underneath there. And then stretch it around your glass jar or cylinder. Make sure there's no wrinkles. So it should kind of look like that. You kind of pull it this way and pull it across. Get all the bubbles and wrinkles worked out. And you'll notice I'm using this curved piece that I basically cut out from one of the baffles here. Cut it about 1 inch wide. I only cut it 1 inch wide because I'm going over this tab. If you're reinforcing the other side, then you won't have this tab, and you can do about a 1/2 inch strip, and you won't have a tab to glue down. So it just depends. Like on my outer layer, this is my outer layer, I have that tab, but on my inner layer I didn't. So it just depends on which side you're doing. You'll have to work it accordingly. But you'll notice that it curves this way. It's a lot easier to do it like that. You might think that it needs to curve this way, but you'll run into some problems. You'll have a lot of wrinkles and stuff. And the reason is because as you lay this down, you kind of want it tight against the body, and then naturally this material, when it inflates, it kind of is larger, the way that this angel dragon is designed. So you want this kind of extra material to be up against the arm. So that's just through trial and error that I kind of learned that. But basically I'll take and put a bunch of glue on this, and I'll usually do about 2 to 3 inches at a time. More than that, it's kind of hard to manage. And then what I do is I kind of take this side over here, the inner part of the curve, and I kind of lay it down first and kind of stretch it, and then there's a little bit of excess over here. Then I kind of work that, kind of pull this arm material up a little bit. Now, you also want to check where you end down here. You don't want to end with it curving, so you kind of want to stretch it, pull it past where you actually have glue, just to make sure that it ends straight. You don't want it to be ending like curved, because then you're just going to have to pull it back up. So take it and roll it real good, and you'll want to go back over stuff you've done previously and check it and roll it, because you'll end up with little puckers and wrinkles and stuff. I do kind of a combination of pushing with my fingers and then rolling. And that's pretty much it. You just want to go around both arms, both legs, and of course all the torso seams get those ones get only about a 1/2 inch of reinforcement on them. All right, so continuing to work on the eyes on the angel dragon, we've got the outer layer punched, and we've got clear material glued behind the eyes. And in fact, show that here. Got all those holes, and on the inside we've got the clear material. And basically, we just laid it on there, used a gel pen to draw the outline, and then took it and then cut it about 1 inch around there, and then carefully glued all the way around. And actually, if you clean with alcohol, both sides of it, and then you can stick it down and it'll sort of static cling. And then that way, when you glue it, it'll be laying flat and there will be no wrinkles. Of course, I used a jar underneath it to do it. So now that that's done, the next step is to put clear material on the inner layer. And what I'm going to do is plan on making basically a very large clear panel from about up here down to about right here. So we're going to make this all clear. And I'll probably take it to about here. So it's going to kind of be like, kind of freehand this. And so I'm going to cut it laying flat. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my clear material and I'm going to use this as a template. Now you see there's a curve there. So this is going to have to be 2 separate pieces. And then I'm going to have to actually put them together on a seam like this. So I'm going to make it, give myself enough room to have some excess. And then I'm going to trace this out. All right, I want to flip it over to get the other side because it needs to actually be a mirror image. So that was actually a blessing in disguise. So match these two up. Like this. What I'm going to do to kind of make this easy, so I'm going to do a together seam and then I'm going to put a reinforcement. So I'm going to do my best to kind of glue a bead along this seam, but I can't leave it apart. And what I want to do is do a small seam, a small little overlap. Might be able to use some of this material. This piece might be pretty good. I'm using my grid on my cutting board. I'm going to do something probably about a 3/8. Alright, so now I got kind of a thin little piece there. I'm going to clean it with some alcohol to get the gel pen marks off of there. So otherwise those will be trapped forever in an area where you're trying to see out of. I need to kind of do the same here. All right. So I think I'll put this over this. Put some glue on it so it can anchor it. The idea is to kind of bridge the gap. So the together seam was really just sort of a placeholder for this seam. Plus it'll all kind of come together to make it strong. What I can do is actually kind of start with running a bead of glue in the crotch of this seam to fill it in, and then add some to the back of the strip. Make sure the camera's looking at what I'm seeing here. Make sure it's kind of 50-50 over this gap. Using a tissue just in case there's any excess, I can kind of dab it up with the paper towel as I go. And so that's the idea. I'm going to keep next, I'm going to attach this clear material to the dragon. And that's basically going to go like that. Now, what I want to do before I glue it is make sure that I have a clean surface, and also I can't have print. It's not going to bond with that print very well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of acetone and pour it into a bowl. And then I'm going to use some Q-tips to take that, or actually I might even be able to just use some paper towels. So for about an inch, I don't want to have any of this print because the glue doesn't bond to it very well. So I'm using the acetone to kind of take that off. I can start gluing the material. And I changed gloves because I got a lot of the blue print on my old gloves and I don't want to smear that around. So here we've got clear material, and I'm going to line it up. And unfold it and kind of put it around this. trying to kind of get it to lay flat. I don't want to end up with wrinkles. This thing is kind of exact cut, and as long as I have about an inch around, this should line up. And so in fact, what I think I'm going to do here to kind of simplify things a little bit is I'm going to go ahead and put some glue around this, and this will give me an anchor point. I'm going to kind of try to get this part started here, going one way. So I've got that seam lined up with that seam right there. So theoretically, I should be able to kind of just take this and kind of work it like that. Looks like I got a little bit of some stretching right there. That is a pretty tight curve, so I'm not surprised. Basically, my 1 inch of overlap is kind of not quite following that factory curve, so it's kind of having to stretch a little bit. But once I put this glue down, I should be able to kind of stretch it. Get things to kind of lay in place. All right, I think that's a pretty good start there. Now what I'm going to do is take my jar out and see if I can get these things to kind of match up. Before I start gluing, I don't want to get myself backed into a hole. I like to kind of look ahead and see how things are. Put most of this dragging in my lap so that the gravity is not pulling it down. I like to kind of lay it out and see how it's going to match up. Kind of see what I need to do. In fact, if I can get it to all just lay flat, I can just start gluing it. Kind of like that. That's not bad. Just want to get, what I'll do, if I can get it to lay flat, I'm gonna get it to where I can glue this other end down here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and anchor this. So that'll make it guaranteed that these 2 points come together, and then the rest of this looks like I can get it to work out. All right, so now I can basically just start gluing this. All right, I'm going to start attaching these two dragons together. I think the first thing that I'm going to do is attach their feet. Just to keep myself straight, what I'm going to do is I have the outside one facing out so I can see the print on it. And then I have the inside one is also facing out. I'm gonna stuff the feet or the legs inside the legs of the other one, just so that I don't have them backwards. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my hand inside the inner layer and push it all the way to the bottom of the foot. And then I'm going to grab that and I'm going to pull it out. So that I have the bottom of this one and the bottom of this one. And now I'm going to attach them. And I'm going to line up, there's 3 claws and 3 claws. And I'm going to put a big circle of glue. And then I'm going to take this one and push it onto it. So go ahead and make the big circle of glue. Make it about 2 inches in diameter. And then I'm going to put a little bit of cornstarch around it, because I did get some extra glue right here. I don't really want that to stick. So the cornstarch is going to kind of help mask off places that I don't want glued. All right, now I'm going to take this and line it up. Push it down. Now, to get the wrinkles out of it, to make sure there aren't any wrinkles, I'm going to put my hand up inside this leg so that I can put some pressure against it and make sure there's no wrinkles. Because right now you can't really tell. And actually what I can do is I can put my other hand inside the other leg. That way I can kind of feel where these two are pressed up against each other. We don't want wrinkles. We want it to be nice and flat. Let's see, what I could do to protect this is I could go ahead and I could pull this back in here. Now that I got it back, I can kind of put a little bit of pressure. And then I'm going to go do the other one. that's that leg. Now this other one, I'll do the same. Next, I'm going to do the hands. And on this one, the customer wants to have hand holes. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and glue a large circle. I'll probably kind of leave it hollow in the middle, and then I'm going to come back and I'll cut a hole. So the size of the hole is for hands is roughly about 2.5 inches to 3 inches. So with this one on the glue, I really want to try to make it about that size. So I'm going to use my circle drawing tool. But first, I am going to pull out my hand hole to get it where I am going to glue it. So I have this one and this one. One thing to really note is you want to make sure that things don't ever get twisted. You do have the claws for alignment, but it's real easy to 180 this. So triple check yourself on the seams. You know, follow the seams, make sure that these things are coming together. So if this seam comes to this seam, then we want to make sure that these 3 claws here line up with these 3 claws, and that means that this will fold over like that. So you could even, once you kind of figure things out, you could go ahead and kind of like clip them together or draw some lines. The problem with drawing the lines, you could still inadvertently flip it over. So I'm just going to keep that little clip on there for right now. And then I want to take my circle drawing tool, and actually that right there is a pretty good size. And that is 3 inches. So 2.5 will work. It's just a tighter fit. The 3 is a little bit better. So I can go ahead, kind of center this, and then draw myself a nice and then what I'll do is I'll do oops, I started doing glue on the inside of this. Well, actually that's okay, I keep forgetting. It needs to be mainly on the outside, but it can also be on the inside just to kind of keep it together, because I'm going to come back and cut a hole, and it's not going to really matter that much if it's glued where I cut. It'll actually kind of keep the 2 layers together. Mainly want to make sure that I have a nice circle of glue about 1/2 inch to 1 inch around this. Nice wide band of thick glue. All right, now take my clip off, and then I'm going to flip this over and align it the best that I can. So that means this claw lines up with this claw, this one lines up with this one with this one. Kind of make sure that the circles of the ends of the hands line up pretty much all the way around. Looks pretty good. And then what I want to do is, like I did with the leg, I want to put my arm inside so that I have the ability to push against it, make sure there's no wrinkles. And I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And then I can kind of put pressure against the other one. And actually it looks like I'm in pretty good shape. I don't feel any wrinkles. Put some pretty good pressure. Now I'm going to kind of analyze around the perimeter. And I usually like to take some cornstarch and kind of go around. And what I'm doing is I'm kind of peeling it a little bit, which gets rid of some of the jaggedness of the circle. Because in fact, right here, it looks like some excess glue kind of got out around here. And what I can do is kind of cover that with cornstarch. That way this stuff doesn't try to bond later. All right, I'm going to put the emergency valve on the inside. And what I did was I put this over my head, and then I kind of tried to figure out where the mouth, what was close to your mouth, and basically one side or the other, but right there was what I picked. And I folded it, snipped it, and made basically a cross. And then now I'm kind of cutting that cross out into a circle. Just take some acetone and wipe this print off from around the hole, because it won't bond with this. So I'm going to take and wipe this off. And then I'll glue it. So I'm going to probably put the tab facing up. Now my emergency valve is done. Next step is to put the breathing tube up on top of the head. So the first thing to do is take this huge valve and cut the stopper off of it. And then cut the flap off so that it basically just becomes a big pass-through. About right here, kind of midway between the top of the, well, actually I'm going to go a little bit closer to this probably than the zipper, because I need to have a nice area around there. So I'm just going to kind of put it, say about 1.5 inches from the bow, 2 inches, I'd say 2 inches from the bow. So kind of check it. Looks pretty good. Then I'm actually going to glue it in kind of like that, like this on the inside. The main reason I check the hole size is you don't want to block this If it's too small, then this thing, sometimes when the person's in there, it kind of goes cockeyed, and you want to have a nice big opening here. So I'm going to flip this thing inside out. I'm going to put a bowl in here so I have something to kind of glue it against. And then I'm going to go ahead and put some glue on this. And then I'm going to center it over that hole. Put some good pressure down on it. Make sure I get all the bubbles out. So I've got a hole in the top of the inner layer, and I've already mounted the valve on the outer layer. What I did to line up that hole on the inner layer was I measured from the bow back to the circle. Then I used my circle drawing tool to basically draw that circle in the same spot here. That way they line up. So now, if I turn the outer layer kind of inside out, you can see the valve there. I'm going to put it through, but the problem is that this is print. So I need to use some acetone to get rid of that print so it'll bond. I'm going to put a pretty big circle around this because we also need to bond some reinforcement strips. So now I can bond these two together. What I'll do is put some glue on the valve and also around it. About a quarter of an inch. I'm going to line up the factory seams. I'm going to push this through. Look at the inside. Make sure this is all the way down. Start putting pressure on it. Make sure there's no wrinkles. Work out all the air bubbles. Here is between the two layers. And I kind of want to make sure there's no weird jagged stuff. I think I got some kind of weird stuff going on right there. Nice 3/4 of an inch wide piece, I think should probably do it. I'm going to go ahead and put a nice amount of glue right here because these are where the factory seams come together. Glue that there to anchor it. All right, and then I'm just going to basically work my way around this where it's joined. We have got all the parts of the suit joined together except for the zipper and the tunnel. I'm going to elect to do the tunnel after it's built. For me, it's just easier once everything's together to cut the hole and put a tunnel through it. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting this zipper on. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go ahead and I'm going to cut the end of the zipper and pull these old sliders off because they're garbage. And then I'm going to put some new ones on. Now that I've got this lower portion glued together, because this is where the tail is going to go, I had to remove the tail to add material, but I need to start my zipper above the tail. So I'm going to put a little bit of powder here to make sure that I don't have any sticking. I have some of this down here that was trying to glue itself together. I don't want that. So now my zipper is going to start right here. I've got that here. So I want this little stop to be right there. I'll go ahead and put a bunch of glue to anchor the bottom of the zipper. Continuing my zipper, got the bottom anchored here. Got my jar underneath it. Get my light here so I can see real well. Try not to stretch the material too much because you may end up with an uneven amount of it on either side of the zipper. You don't want to get to the top and realize you got too much. work with the jar underneath it, and kind of do about 2 to 4 inches at a time, whatever I feel comfortable with. About a 1/2 inch wide. And then I take it and pull it across the jar. Roll it. A little container here that works pretty well for rolling. And I periodically pull it to check for stuff like that, where the glue is kind of seeped past the end of the seam and it's gluing the 2 layers together. I'll check back and make sure that they're still okay in a little while. Keep working this technique until the whole area around the zipper is done. And then we'll come back and we'll do the reinforcement strips that go over this. So the reinforcement strip will sit halfway on this side and halfway on that side of the seam, and that'll make it stronger and also guarantee that we have a good seal. Alright, so I'm finishing the zipper by doing a strip of material. As you can see, I've done 1/2 of the zipper already on this side. And now I'm going to do this half over here. I'm going to do a strip over it. And I'm also going to do a nice big patch over basically the bottom part of the zipper. I'm going to kind of make a stop, but I'm going to make the patch big enough that it kind of covers this whole area, because this needs to be reinforced. There's kind of a stress point at the corner of each side. In fact, I went ahead and put a circle patch over it because there is kind of a gap in the corner. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I'm going to cut a circle of material. Over this corner here. I'm going to put this jar underneath it to give me something to push against. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to round the end, because the corners don't like to stay glued. And then I'm going to take the same end that I just put the circle on, and I'm going to put some glue to anchor it. And then as I work my way up, I'm gonna move the camera a little bit so you can see a little bit better. As I work my way up, I'm gonna put glue in the groove, because sometimes there's little spots, little nooks and crannies that the glue needs to get into, and it won't if you just put the glue on this. So I'll do about 3 or 4 inches at a time, Make sure I cover every little bit of this. And then I want it to kind of go half and half across this. Looks like a little bit of this is kind of overlapping my zipper, which is okay. It might not bond real well. I may have to come back and put some glue up under there to kind of soak into that fabric of the zipper. That's okay. I'll come back and check on that. Alright, I forgot to videotape as I was doing the strip. I did like about a 1 inch and went all the way around. One thing I actually had some trouble with as I was not talking about the strip, but just the tail where you fold it under. What I found out is that you don't want to bring the tail down and attach it where you drew the line. You actually want to come outside that, because you want, when you fold the material under, you want the edge to come up against your circle. Because if you come down on the circle and come in, you're actually taking the tail and you're trying to put it against a smaller circle, glue it against a smaller circle, and you're going to end up having too much tail to go around, and you're going to end up with it's going to go around, and then you're going to end up with extra material that juts out. So I did about half of it. I ripped it up, and then I realized I needed to come outside that a bit. So anyways, just a heads up there. And now that I've inflated it, I'm kind of looking for places that I need to maybe add a little bit of extra glue if it's sticking out. And I could also spray some soapy water at this point and kind of do a little bit of a leak check. But you're probably going to have some pieces sticking out because it is going around a circle, so it's gonna tend to want to do that, kind of pucker a little bit. So you want to kind of keep putting some pressure on this ring, because it is it's got a lot of stress, because if the tail gets grabbed and moved around, it's going to put some stress on that right here where it attaches. So you want that to be pretty strong. And so that's why I'm going to kind of go around and make sure that my perimeter's glued. And it takes time to just sit here and kind of work with it and get the, wait for the glue to kind of set up. But you just have to do it. You got to sit here and kind of work with it. Keep pushing these pieces down that pucker up until they set, until the glue kind of sets. Keep going all the way around. Make sure there's no loose edges. Since this has got a lot of pressure on it, this is a fairly critical piece to keep this big long tail attached. That's pretty much it.